Alright, welcome to Outrage Astrology. This is Mike.
And I'm Brittany.
We talk about astrology, we might piss you off, but if you take a little time and listen closely, you might learn a little something. So, what are we talking about today, Brittany?
Talking about some other techniques for doing relationship charts. So we're going to cover a few different types of charts that we haven't talked about before, like the Davison chart, the Marks chart. We're also going to talk about transits to different compatibility charts, and also we're going to talk about some progressed composites.
Yeah, these are a couple lesser known tactics, if you will, for breaking down the mechanics of a relationship. But they're still effective, and expect like the ones that we're covering in this particular segment, you're not going to find a lot of information on. But through years and years of arduous, soul-crushing study, we have managed to compile quite a bit of information on these particular subjects. So, what's a Davison chart?
Okay, so a Davison chart is when you take the birth time and place of partner A and the birth time and place of partner B, and you like average them together and find the one that's in the middle. So it's actually a real chart of a real time and place that actually happened, but it's not either partner A or partner B, so it's together.
Yeah, it's basically a composite chart. It's just created in a different way mathematically. You can find it on astro.com. Once you input both partners' data, then you can pull down in the Dropbox from the different types of charts. And the best one to use would be the Davison relationship chart corrected. There's like 4 different ones to use, but that one's going to be the most streamlined version. It's basically the same as a composite chart. You can use them interchangeably. You can even compare both of them. It's just the Davison chart's just a different version of the same damn story. And for the most part, you will see a lot of things, like visible in both the composite and the Davison chart. Sometimes, like for example, if you see the composite sun in the 7th house of the composite chart, then you will see the sun of the relationship in the 1st house of the Davison chart. So in the 1st and the 7th, they're so similar. They're just different sides of the same axis. So it's definitely worth taking into account. Just the best thing that you're gonna want to do is to make sure you watch out for recurring themes in both charts. Like heavy, really harsh aspects in the composite that also show up in the Davison are something you're going to want to take notice of. And Davisons take things into account that a composite chart wouldn't, like planets in retrograde, for example. So
this is like when your math teacher told you to check your work.
Yeah. So you just basically read them the same. Most aspects you find in the Davison chart, you can actually, like, let's say you Google a composite chart aspect, you can use that definition in a Davison chart as well. I mean, it's not any different. Like I said, it's just a different version of the same damn story.
Good to
They
know.
just they haven't been around as long. People didn't start using them until like the 70s.
But, and I would argue that they are, and we'll talk about transits a little bit later, but this is a good one that you can use with transits because, as I said, this is a real chart. It actually occurred. The planets were where they are in the Davison chart at some point in time, whatever time, it calculates for you. So it's very sensitive to transits.
Yeah. I would state that the composite chart's sensitive to transits as well, but I don't really have any logic backing that up. I only have observations backing that up.
So yeah, we planned on talking about transits during this episode, but we want to just kind of mention that we do have some slightly different viewpoints on them. Mine is more didactic, and Mike's is actually from practice, so you can, take which one you want. So we'll talk about that in a little bit.
All right, Professor Robinson.
Yeah, I know big words like didactic. Do you like when I say didactic? Okay, Mark's charts. You want to talk about Mark's charts?
Yeah, Mark's charts are kind of fucking awesome.
They are.
Not a lot of people know about them, but I've heard a couple astrologers employ them. You'll find a little bit of information here and there, but they're kind of tricky. They're not tricky to read. They're more of like tricky to actually to generate. What a Mark's chart is, it's each individual person's opinion of the relationship as a whole. And you'll be using Davison charts to build the Marks chart. This is a situation where you cannot use composite charts and Davison charts interchangeably. Only a Davison will work for this. What you have to do is you will go to astro.com. You will build the Davison chart between you and another person. You will save that information. There's a
By
little button.
clicking, yeah, add these data to my Astro, right?
Yeah, this is the way to do it using astro.com, which is, in my opinion, the best software to use or the best website to use to generate charts. But I mean, if you're using like SolarFire or something like that, I'm sure they have a way of doing this, but we're going to be going over the process for astro.com.
Because we're cheap. We don't want to pay for that shit.
Hey, I pay for that shit.
You pay for SolarFire?
No, I pay for astro.com. Year? Hell yeah.
Oh, wow. You're like one of those that are keeping it alive for the rest of us cheap ass.
Hey, that website don't pay for itself. It needs contributors. What would I do if astro.com was unable to support itself and they had to shut down? I would be literally like up a shit creek without a paddle.
Well, thank you for your support.
Yes, I have to.
Okay.
It's imperative that I do, or at least claim that I do when I really don't. Anyway, all right. So a Marks chart, once you save the data of the Davison chart for the relationship, it'll then appear up in one of the drop boxes where you would normally input an individual's birth information. So in the top box, you would put the Davison chart, so-and-so plus so-and-so. It'll be really easy to identify. And then the bottom box, you will put one of the two people individually in, and you will create another Davison chart between one of the people and the Davison, if that makes sense. Does that make sense to you, Brittany?
Totally.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're basically making a Davison between yourself and the Davison.
I'm making a Davison of you and I right now.
Oh, no. Okay.
I'm doing it.
We can check it out. All right, so once you do that, you'll be able to get a good view of that person's particular opinion of the relationship. Like, if it's one-sided, you can pick up things that would lead for one to believe that it is one-sided. Like let's say like the sun and the moon are making like an inconjunct, or there's like, let's say one person has their Marks chart sun in the 12th house. It might bring up issues for them that they might not necessarily want to deal with. Or if there's just a lot of harsh aspects, that could mean that they feel really, really uncomfortable in the relationship. Or if you see something where like Neptune is making a lot of crazy aspects in one of the Marks charts of the individuals, but not the other, that means one person is way over idealizing the relationship. They're getting the long end of the stick in terms of Neptune, so to speak.
So, Mike, in our composite, your opinion is Venus trining Neptune. I have to giggle at that a little bit.
Oh, but this is
so cute. That's so cute.
What other stuff do you see?
So first of all, what does it mean in a Marks chart when Venus is trining Neptune?
Let's not get into that.
Exactly. He's like, what else? I don't want to tell you.
Well, where is Venus at? What house is Venus at?
Okay. So Venus now that I'm pulling Placidus up, and the Placidus of our Marks chart is kind of whack. But anyway, Venus is actually in the 12th house. Okay. It is opposite Pluto in the 6th, and it is trining Neptune in the 8th.
Oh, goody. Okay, so I'm secretly in love with you. I don't want to let you go, and I.
Oh God, this is fun.
See, this is where it really could get. Yeah, it's you're not looking at the relationship as a whole. You're looking about how each person feels about the relationship.
I'm just gonna click right off of this right now. Okay.
Wait, where's the sun at though?
It's in the 1st.
That's important. Where the sun is at in the Marks chart for each person, if it's in one of the cardinal houses, that means that person views that relationship as being very, very significant as a part of like their development or their identity, or just in terms of their life. If you see the sun in the 10th house or the 1st house, that is really significant because that person feels like it's a relationship that can actually help further their development as a person. When you find it in the composite chart, that there's a shared aspect to it. But if you're seeing it in one and not the other, with the with the sun in a cardinal house, there's a possibility that the relationship could be important to both people, but one person may see the relationship as more important to them than the other person does.
Yeah, I mean, it's really helpful. Like, just a practical example. So you pulled up a me and my best friend's chart, and you found something, just brief cursory view of it. What aspect was that, by the way, that you saw in that chart about the sharing?
I think it was like a Venus square Pluto type thing.
Okay. So he was like, yeah, your friend really doesn't like sharing with you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Every time I go visit her, she lets me borrow her
It
clothes.
was the Jupiter square Pluto
Okay.
in her March chart. There we go.
Okay. Yeah. And I was like, what do you mean? She always lets me borrow her clothes. It's no big deal. Like. And so I texted her that you said that. And she was like, well, in reality, it's kind of that uncomfortable chuckle. I don't really love, that fact because my sister used to borrow my clothes and wear them to school and she wouldn't return them and it kind of upset me. And I'm like, oh shit, I guess I need to maybe not do that anymore. So, I mean, I don't know. It illuminates some things that you definitely wouldn't see in any other chart.
Yeah. When you do the March chart, like let's say you're doing like Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky's relationship. I don't remember the specific of Bill Clinton's March chart. I remember it being a lot of more lighthearted placements. I think there was like some 11th house action, some 5th house on the end of the spectrum, maybe a little bit of Neptune. But in Monica's chart, there was like some crazy, like moon conjunct Pluto, 8th house was activated. Like it was like an obsession for her. That's probably what, drove her to decide to cross the obvious professional boundaries to, get that stain on her beautiful blue dress. And Bill
So
Clinton
can you use all the same definitions for the Marx chart like you can with the Davison for basically can you pull up a composite definition and apply it to a Marx chart?
Sort of. Yeah, you can, but you have to keep in mind that it's only for one person.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not applying both aspects to both people.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So, I mean, there you go. Also, on top of that, like, let's say you're looking at a really harsh aspect in the Davison or composite chart as a whole. Like, let's say Mars opposite Saturn. There we go. That's a really harsh aspect. And you're noticing an aspect that's similar to it in the Marx chart, like Mars in hard aspect to Pluto, or you're seeing the Mars in hard aspect to Saturn in the Marx chart. Well, the person with that aspect in their Marx chart is going to feel the aspect from the composite or Davison chart more viscerally than the other person, unless you have it going both ways. But
so you can see who's throwing shade in the relationship, right?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
So you can see who feels more challenged in the relationship, or yeah, it's just because I've seen many relationships where like they'll pull up the composite chart and it'll be just like, beautiful and interesting, but the relationship's totally one-sided. Totally one-sided. Or one person's just not feeling it. And you can see that in synastry too. But the Marx chart's going to put a little bit, it's going to be more in your face about what really it is.
Okay. So. Cool.
Yeah, so that's a Marx chart. Transits to yeah.
Okay. So progress composites is kind of where we're going next, because we talked about composites. So now we need to talk about progress composites, right?
Yeah. Let me do transit afterward.
Yeah, let's do that.
I like progress composites.
Okay, I like progress composites too. So I mean they're calculated by taking partner A's progressed natal chart and partner B's progressed natal chart and finding the midpoints there. So they are very helpful in figuring out where the relationship is as a whole internally at that point in time.
Yep. One thing I've noticed is I've had a lot of friendships that weren't necessarily like super long relationships, or they started off really, really intense. And you look in the composite chart and it doesn't look like that intense of a friendship or relationship or whatever. But if you look at the progress composite, and I've seen this a lot, you'll see Venus conjunct Mars in the progressed composite. And that, to me, would say that those people are just meeting at a particular time in their lives. It just matches up. They just met each other at the perfect time in their lives, where like their current wants and needs are coming into alignment at that particular point in time. Progressed composites aren't the best for long-term relationships. I mean, no, for short-term relationships. I'm sorry, I apologize. Because you can't really watch the relationship progress with it, but for long-term relationships, the progressed composite becomes so much more important.
Mm.
You'll see changes in the dynamics of the relationship when the moon changes signs every 2.5 years. You'll see it, especially like the moon square the sun. When you see that pop up in the progressed composite, that can show a period of tension. That can show the possible emergence of an affair. I've noticed that. Yeah. That's actually more of an older school, like an old school way of interpreting that. They say that moon opposite the sun or moon square the sun in a composite represents a third person, but I wouldn't really say that. I would say that that's the case only in the progressed composite.
Huh.
Makes you want to pull up the progressed composite.
It really does. I know a lot of people are gonna be like snooping on their progressed composites right now and being like, "What's that motherfucker doing?"
Oh, there's actually a thing on solar arcs that we can definitely talk about that points to cheating, but we'll talk about that in that particular episode, which will be coming up soon. We'll be talking about predictive astrology. That'll be our next series, which I'm really excited to embark on.
I'm really excited about it too.
Brittany's fucking phenomenal with solar arcs.
I'm super stoked about especially with solar arcs. I feel like they're so exciting. Okay, we won't do it now, but yeah, we've got a lot of really good juicy stuff. I just use the word juicy, which we're not going to talk about right now, but anyway, a lot of really good stuff coming up with predictive astrology. But so, okay, real quick,
Speaking of predictive
transits, exactly. Good segue, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So transits to the composite. You use them. Why do you use them?
I use them just because I've seen them actually manifest as something significant. Now, a lot of astrologers don't like, because you brought up the point of only using transits to the Davison, and I actually understand that theory, and a lot of astrologers feel that way. I want you to explain why you feel that way.
Okay. So a transit is something the planets are actually doing at that point in time. If we look at the transits on a chart, if we had our telescope out, we could check them out and all the planets would be exactly where they say they are. It's actually happening. It's in real time and space. So a Davison chart, because it is a real time in space, we can use transits to it. But a composite chart is a blend of midpoints. So the chart that it creates is not a real chart. So a Davison chart, for example, if you pull up a Davison chart between you and your partner, there will be some baby born somewhere in the world that will have the same chart as you and your partner's Davison chart. Why? Because it's a real time, a real place, therefore a real chart. I'm not saying the composite's not a real chart, but it's not showing time and space. It's not, it's not a real time and place. It's a midpoint chart, which is helpful in its own way. But to pull up transits, which are real, to a composite, which is a mathematical computation, does not make sense to me.
Yeah. The only reason that I'm so, I refuse to stop looking at transits to the composite, the basic composite, because I've seen it time and time again. Jupiter transits to the composite chart are really, really important, in my opinion, because if you are looking at weak spots in a relationship, let's say the sun is really challenged, got some really nasty aspects to Pluto or Saturn or Mars, and I've noticed transit Jupiter go over the sun in the composite chart and blow those particular issues up and cause breakups. I've seen Jupiter transits cause breakups in a composite chart. I've also seen charts where once the composite ascendant goes over the composite Uranus transit Uranus goes over the ascendant of the composite chart or the descendant, that can a lot of times signal a breakup. I've seen that happen. I've just seen I've seen transits manifest as real events and occurrences time and time again, and I know it seems counterintuitive whenever you explain things as methodically as Brittany does to not use them, but a lot of astrology, I hate to break it to you, is intuition based.
You're right. That
It's
was
an
actually
art.
the point that I was going to make as far as, to play devil's advocate to myself. Because, I have to do that. You've seen my chart. I have Mars in Libra, and I am always going to play the devil's advocate, even if it means arguing with myself. You're right. Astrology is an art and a science. And the reason that modern science has said, no, we don't believe in astrology, it's not science, is because it is more of an intuitive science. So yes, if it works for you, use it.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
That's all I'm gonna say.
That's all I had to say about
And
that.
you can definitely put transits to the Davison. You just interpret it the same way you would interpret transits to the composite. I tend to be very judicious about transits to the composite. I look mostly for conjunctions, squares, and oppositions, and for planets crossing an angle. Those are the big things I look for. I try not to get too crazy with it.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's wise in transits anyway, which we will get into when we go into predictive astrology. But I think that's a wise way to approach transits in general, because not everybody feels every transit. Dear God, every time Mercury goes into retrograde, like, keep your panties on, it's going to be okay. So yeah, it's something that you need to be looking for the very tense, hard aspects, particularly, like you said, the conjunctions, the oppositions, the squares.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
So, is there anything else that feel like we should cover over in this podcast? I feel like that was pretty good. We were pretty comprehensive about everything we needed to get out.
We are very comprehensive. I feel like we nailed that shit.
Yeah, because we already comprehend the fuck out of these fucking issues and these particular relationship reading tactics.
That's right. So, if you would like to consult either of us for any astrological issue in your life, you can reach us at what?
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 At outrageastrology@gmail.com. If
Yeah.
you really want to get somebody to interpret your Mark's chart, that's going to be Mike there, because he knows what the fuck is up with Mark's charts. So make sure to review us wherever you get your podcast so we can keep bringing you great content.